as India continues to push for make in India, produce in India, but also decrease India's reliance on imports, one of the sectors that has seen some sort of focus is pulses as well as rice. So commodities that essentially we consume on a daily basis, Tur Dal being one of them. Now India is importing all essential dals to the point where we are dependent on imports of 15%. 15% of the total consumption comes from countries outside of India when it comes to essential pulses. The government of India has taken, in fact, measures on measures to ensure that there is enough supply within the country. In a latest measure to do so, Home Minister Amit Shah launched a Tur Dal portal yesterday where farmers can come in, they can send off their supplies, and cooperatives can directly purchase from that portal above market price. Another step taken by the government to ensure that there is enough buffer and farmers are incentivized to grow pulses within the country.
Absolutely. As I see it, I think, Shweta, this government right now, given that it is election year, the government obviously has to balance two aspects very clearly. One is India's growth, GDP growth. The other is inflation not playing spoiled sport. Now, essentials, if we continue to depend on essentials like wheat or pulses, wheat,
rice.
Of course, India has an excess of, rice India has an excess of, and even the Bharat Rice initiative taken by the government is expected to have enough and more capacity to keep rice under check when it comes to the cost or the price of rice. And Tur Dal now being another essential, Arhar Dal or Tur Dal as it is referred to, or pigeon peas as we discovered as it is referred to, is obviously one of the essential components of making the Indian veg thali. Now, at one level, if you continue to be dependent on imports, then these warlike situations, oil prices, crude prices, all of those continue to have some sort of a shadow, cast some sort of a shadow on your current account deficit, and be dependence on these external factors which impact the price of pulses. At the other end of the spectrum, if you have a portal which is letting farmers and procurement organizations sort of liaise with each other real time, it's a clear dashboard for the government also to know how much is the capacity, what do we have, what are the kind of reserves we are talking about, and channelize other ways that you're not dependent on intraday market volatility. Your advance orders, future contracts, etc. can be signed to at least keep your contracts and keep your prices that you will get at a future date in check. So I think overall it's definitely good. It is going to, at some level, a very minor perhaps improvement in current account deficit. If not improvement, then definitely it's not going to let a negative impact on current account deficit, and on the other hand, tackling inflation. Absolutely. So I think we know very clearly right now, government's focus, the finance ministry's focus is growth, growth, growth. RBI's focus is inflation to be tamed. So a portal like this or any sort of policy measure like this is going to help both these causes, the growth as well as the inflation.
All right. I mean, obviously the timing is interesting. This is right ahead of the elections. But, as far as India's dependency on pulses is concerned, Home Minister also said something very interesting. He said we're setting a timeline of 4 years, which is till 2028 for India to become self-reliant in pulses, because that is one of the areas where we are still dependent on imports to a large extent. While such a measure does help farmers to come directly interact with procurement agencies, at the same time I think there has been a concerted effort, an attempt from India to have enough buffer stock. And that is what we saw in case of rice as well, where India made sure that it stopped exporting rice up till a point where prices could be contained. Now, if you talk particularly about pulses, inflation has been in double digit in food inflation, over 10%. I think that is going to be one of the focus areas of the government.
In fact, at the peak of inflation in the month of July, I remember food inflation was as high as about 19%, 20% as well. So, like I said, obviously inflation is something that the government has to focus on in election year, even though that might not be the direct priority for the finance ministry. It is direct priority for election season.
Absolutely.
And growth, obviously, on account of reducing your import dependence, augurs well for the country as a whole.
Absolutely. So, agri on one hand, inflation on the other. I think a procurement portal to this point serves both those purposes and coming right ahead of elections at a very appropriate time.